Let's take a look at Crazy Food Truck Volume 1. Stay tuned. So today we're going to be taking a look at the first volume of the newest series in Viz Media's signature line, Crazy Food Truck. Before we get into talking about it, I want to give quick thanks to my friends over at Viz Media for sending me this book so that I could do this review today. And before we talk about, the review and about the story and all that stuff, I do want to go over some quick, just basic information about Crazy Food Truck in general. So as I mentioned, this is the newest series that's part of Viz Media's signature line, and as such, it does have the oversized trim to it. And as with many series that are in the signature line, it is a seinen title, so it is aimed towards the older male demographic. And it is actually labeled with the parental advisory explicit content on there. Mostly that is because there is nudity throughout this book. I'll talk about that later on during the actual review though. So the series was published in the Seinen magazine Comic Bunch from July of 2020 until December of 2021, with a total of 16 chapters collected into 3 volumes. So it's only 3 volumes long, meaning it's not a huge commitment. So if you're someone who doesn't typically like to get into really long titles, this might be one for you. And the series is written and drawn by Rokuro Ogaki. Ogaki hasn't done that much work in manga as of yet, but he might be most well known for the manga adaptation of the anime Akudama Drive. Alright, so with the basics out of the way, what is Crazy Food Truck about? Well, the series follows our protagonist, Gordon, who is the proprietor of the titular Crazy Food Truck. As we open up on the series, we see Gordon cooking bacon so that he can make BLTs. He makes the sandwiches and then he starts driving down the road and he comes across something. He almost hits something in the middle of the road. And as he swerves out of the way and he gets out to check on what it was, it turns out that it's actually a body bag, and inside of the bag is a naked woman who turns out to actually be alive despite the fact that he thought that she was dead. And she starts to eat one of the sandwiches that he's made. He takes the woman with him into his food truck and feeds her and gives her water and lets her bathe herself. And he learns eventually that her name is Arisa. She has a really, really heavy appetite, and she also happens to have members of an armed militia chasing after her for reasons that we aren't quite aware of just yet. So Gordon does his best to protect Arisa and basically get her away from these armed people that are chasing after her, and he does so without really giving much question to what's going on. He soon finds that Arisa has actually eaten everything in his truck, and so they have to go out and gather more food because he does, have to cook to make a living. And that's kind of where we begin with the setting of the series. We're introduced to our 2 main characters. We're introduced to this world, which is kind of this deserted wasteland type of world. And we see that Gordon, despite the fact that he is seemingly this mild-mannered food truck owner, that there's something else about him. He's a little bit too prepared and a little too calm when it comes to these situations, like these armed people who are chasing after Arisa. So the rest of this first volume, which contains the first 4 chapters of the series, sees the characters doing a few things. Hunting for various food by finding different animals that they use for meat and whatnot, preparing food, and then going to different places to sell said food, because it is a food truck. And so with that, just like many gourmet manga, you do get to see a couple of dishes being made that are mimicking dishes that would exist in the real world, but they are slightly different given the fact that these are they're using fictional animals and stuff. There's a lot of series like that utilize fictional animals to make dishes that are very similar to what you'd get in the real world. And the animals here are very different from what we have in the real world because it is this deserted wasteland. And most of what they come across are actually sea creatures that have adapted to the desert. So for instance, there's like a blowfish that has evolved to be like walk around on land, that I think it's called like the blow cow now instead, and it's still the same, like it puffs up with the spikes and stuff, but it's the size of a cow and it has legs and it walks around. And they have I believe they were called rock squids that they fish out of the ground, and those are used to make one of the first dishes that they make. I think in the second chapter is the rock squid burgers. And a common occurrence that happens throughout is that Arisa will wind up eating most of the food that they actually prepare, and Gordon never gets too upset about it. He just says, well, I guess we'll have to go and get more, meat so I can make more food, because I do have to cook to make money. But while that's all going on the surface level, you do kind of have, they delve into, what's actually the history of both of these people. And it's very clear that Gordon has a little bit more going on behind the scenes than what you might expect, or he's not really, open about who he is. And you do have some little hints at some history with that character. Now, it's clear that something has gone on in this world, because it is in this kind of post-apocalyptic wasteland where there doesn't seem to be any major bodies of water anywhere, but as of yet in this first volume, we haven't really learned why that is. So the series really sets up for a pretty interesting start with this this intriguing world, this very empty world, and it has a fun plot with these characters that are, fun to follow. And I always, for one, personally, I really enjoy food-related manga and any sort of gourmet manga. And so this one I knew was going to fall right into my wheelhouse. But it's also really action-packed, because as I had mentioned before, you have these armed militia members who are chasing after Arisa for whatever reason. And you get to see these action-packed moments, which do sometimes result into comedic scenes where Arisa is trying to, protect herself, and Gordon trying to protect her as well from these people. I think that this series has somewhat of a similar vibe to Sakamoto Days, but obviously a little bit more mature given that it is a seinen title. But it's like taking a good amalgamation of Mad Max and Food Wars, because you get that apocalyptic wasteland with no water like you see in like the Mad Max movie, specifically in Fury Road. And then you also have the Food Wars aspect would be not just the fact that it is a food related series, but also the fact that this series features a character that likes to not have clothes on, and Food Wars of course had a ton of fan service. And so that's, like I mentioned earlier, it is rated mature. It does have the explicit content sticker on the front because of the fact that it does have nudity throughout. So I want to mention that, because if you are under 18 or whatever, just keep that in mind. Or if you are a parent or adult that has a child in your life and you're looking for something fun for them to read, just keep that in mind before you hand this over. Like, it does have full frontal nudity. One of the main characters, Arisa, she prefers to be naked, at least without a top on. So that does come up multiple times throughout this first volume. This is a really solid first volume. I think that the action is really good. There's a lot of great action and choreography throughout. The artwork is very solid. I enjoyed the premise here, just with what's going on, and it left enough to be desired that I really am anticipating seeing what happens in the next volume, so we can get some answers as to who these characters are, what's going on, and hopefully some answers as to what happened to make this world as it is. I also think that Ogaki should be praised a bit for his artwork here, because he does a great job of transitioning between having these action-packed scenes and then having scenes that are a lot more quiet, a lot more scenic, and really nice to look at. And it's nice to have someone who can do both, who can go between these fast-paced and kinetic scenes, but at the same time can give you something quiet and subdued. I think there's a lot to praise about this little book. It's very entertaining, and I would recommend it for anyone who just wants a quick, fun, action-packed series that they don't really have to put much thought into while reading. I know that I'll be looking forward to picking up the next 2 volumes of this series and adding them into my collection, and I hope that you will as well. If you've already picked up Crazy Food Truck Volume 1 and have read it, please let me know in the comments down below what your thoughts about this new series are. And if you haven't yet picked it up, let me know if you're planning on grabbing it now after my recommendation. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I really hope that it helped for you to decide whether or not you want to pick up this new manga, because I know we all got budgets we have to to adhere to, and you can't pick up everything, and it's helpful to have some people to let you know what's going on with these new books. So again, if you plan on picking this one up, let me know down below. I'm really excited to hear it. Otherwise, I'll see you all in the next one. Peace out.